David Clegg is the political editor of the Daily Record, and Margaret Smith is a former Liberal Democrat MSP. Well, let's talk about what John Swinney was saying, Margaret, about education. I mean, he didn't actually say that if Parliament votes to scrap P1 testing that he would ignore that, but there was an implication that he might.
Yes.
Is irrespective of what he decides, if he decides to do that, is it sustainable?
I mean, he's technically right in the sense that he's not bound by it if he loses that vote, but it doesn't send out the right message. If all the other opposition parties in the Scottish Parliament say he's doing the wrong thing and vote against P1 standardised testing, then it really doesn't send out a very good message. I mean, remember, the Scottish Government is constantly telling the UK Government that they disrespect the will of the Scottish Parliament. It doesn't really look very good when it's the Deputy First Minister who's doing the same thing. I mean, I actually have a certain amount of sympathy for what he's trying to do in terms of setting up a benchmark at the beginning of a school journey for a child. And obviously, it's not just P1, it's P3 and P7 and S3 as well. But he's got the EIS against him, he's got a lot of parents groups against him, he's got all of the other opposition parties in the Scottish Parliament against him. I think sometimes you're in a hole and you should just stop digging.
This question of whether parents have a right to withdraw their children, I think the conclusion from that was pretty much that they do, even if they don't have a legal right. John Swinney said that he couldn't imagine that if they went and really objected, a head teacher would force the issue. But it's still slightly ambiguous.
Yeah, it's ambiguous. I think it's because it's maybe not codified anywhere, but certainly from what Mr. Swinney was saying to you there, I think it's clear that he's giving the advice that if parents come to a school and express concerns to not be putting children through this without their parents' permission, because it would cause major difficulties. I think the wider problem that he has is that he's already scrapped this education bill, which was 2 years in the making. He was brought into the education brief as Nicola Sturgeon's right-hand man, her most reliable minister, who was considered a steady pair of hands when he was finance secretary.
Although he says actually head teachers will be able to, for example, have more control over hiring and firing than they had last year as a result of what he's done.
Well, yes, that is no doubt a welcome change, and he had said he would give more power to head teachers, and he appears to have done it in that. But it's quite a small tweak around the edges. When what had originally been badged as radical reform of the school system as the SNP's driving mission in government for the parliamentary term, I think they are looking like they're failing on education, that they've set themselves up with serious rhetoric saying this is going to be the thing that we will transform, this is our central mission for changing Scotland. And today the main thing you could say was that head teachers will now be able to have more say over who's teaching in their schools. Well, that's good, but it's not dramatic.
Ruth Davidson.
Well, can I just add one? Named person as well was another thing that they got into a bit of a mess on education as well.
Ruth Davidson, she
Yes.
was in the Sunday Times today saying she does not ever want to be Prime Minister. And she was also talking about her personal problems in the past and self-harming. And she said that she would be worried if she were to do something like be a PM of the effect on her mental health. But she seemed to be ruling it out forever.
Yeah, I think she was, and I'm not at all surprised. I mean, I think the conversations I've had with Ruth in the past, I don't think that's actually what she wants. I think she's in a new chapter in her own life in terms of just about to become a mother. I think she was speaking from the heart. I think she was speaking very bravely about the mental health difficulties that she's had in the past. And I think for some people, you know, if you've had those kind of difficulties in the past, you have to find coping mechanisms. And she was talking about her coping mechanisms to make sure that that depression never comes back and haunts her again.
But interestingly, David, she seemed to be saying she still has the problem. She talked about how when what was the phrase she used? Was a black cloud,
yes,
a blanket comes over her.
She said blanket, I think.
Yeah, and I think she has a way through exercise and other things of actually kind of fighting that.
I don't think she was suggesting that she's had this problem recently, but I think she was saying that she's always aware that if she's not taking the steps that she feels she needs to take. I think she mentioned exercise, routine, controlling alcohol consumption, all stuff that doctors will obviously tell you about controlling if you feel like you've got a bit of a difficulty with mental health. I think that the brave part is speaking out about it. And yes, you can be cynical and say she's promoting a book which is out and that it's useful for a political career to show a human side. But I do think that if you're a young person in Scotland or elsewhere in the UK, if you're struggling with these kind of issues, to see someone like Ruth Davidson, who is so prominent and so successful, that has had such a successful career, to see her speaking about having to have these problems herself will give encouragement.
This wasn't just general be sympathetic to me. This was quite specific.
Yeah, she's gone into a lot of detail, which I think people will recognise and must have been difficult to talk about.